are in our quadratics unit and looking at quadratics in standard form, and we're going to do some application problems today. We're talking about projectile motion. When things go up, they come back down thanks to gravity, and so this is a general formula that's used for that. You can tell it's a quadratic. It has a squared term in it. The h here stands for height. It's supposed to be a lowercase h. T stands for time. V stands for velocity. And S stands for the starting height. The other H that we have here talks about like how high it's like, so if I want to say when is it going to hit the ground, we would have a height of 0. When is it going to reach 10 feet in the air? You'd put the 10 in for the height. Whereas the S here starts on the ground, like he's kicking it from the ground, so it's a starting height of 0. Or if somebody's diving into a pool, it might have a starting height of 8 feet above the ground for like platform diving or something like that. So let's look at a word problem. A dolphin jumping out of the water is modeled by the function h equals -2t squared plus 8t. After how many seconds is the dolphin at a height of 6 feet? So height of 6 feet, we're going to let h equal 6. And we're going to put it into our equation. 6 equals -2t squared plus 8t. This chapter we've learned lots of ways to solve a quadratic. In a quadratic, we typically, when it's standard form, we want to have the squared term positive. So I'm going to move all of these to the left side here by adding the 2t to the other side, 2t squared. I want that to go to this side. I'm going to take the 8t and minus the 8t to the other side. And when I write this in standard form, you not only want your t squared to be positive, but you want it to be in our standard form. We want the t squared, then the t, then the other number. And we set it equal to 0 to solve. So once we have all our numbers in our problem, you move things. In this case, I moved them to the left to have the a term to be positive, and now it's set equal to 0. We have it in what we call standard form. A couple things to then choose a method. Methods we've had is greatest common factor. We've had X method factoring. We've had completing the square, square roots, quadratic formula, all those choices that we've had all along this chapter. Now we're going to apply that to solving this problem. If I looked at this problem, most people would probably see this and you would X method. So let's say I just look at that and I start the X method process. 2 times 6 is 12. The middle number, or the B term, was 8. I need the factors of 12 that add up to 8. So we could list out the factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And I'm going to use -2 and -6. The multiplies give me a positive 12 and adds up to -8. So we remove the middle term and put those numbers in the middle of our problem. Then you remember the next thing with X method, then we group the first two together and the second two together. So you put parentheses around the first two and parentheses around the second two. These two have a 2t in common. Bring down your sign, so I'm bringing down a negative. Those can both be divided by 6. When you divide a negative, 6 divided by -6 is going to change this to a -1. So my two parentheses are 2t minus 6 and t minus 1 equals 0. Once you have, in this case, I factored it. Again, you can use quadratic formula also. Once you factor it, you have to set each parenthesis equal to 0. So my work to solve would be 2t minus 6 equals 0. You would add 6 to the other side. 0 plus 6 is 6. And then you divide by 2. Okay, the other parenthesis we had was t minus 1 equals 0. So we'll add 1 to the other side. 0 plus 1 equals 1. So, on this particular question, choices we could have were X method or quadratic formula. If you want to choose the quadratic formula, due to this is the video, I'm going to show that option. Another thing you could have done in this case is realize, if you look back at that problem right here, do you see how they can all be divided by 2? So some people like to take, alright, option 2, to take this and divide them all by 2. If you divide all those by 2, you're left with t squared minus 4t plus 3. And then you could X method and come out to t minus 1 and t minus 3. And if you solved those, do you see how it comes out to t equals 1, t equals 3. So option 2 would be to take out the GCF first. Most people don't recognize that. They just start with the X method, and that's fine. Option 3, if I have another color for this. I'll say option 3 would have been to do the quadratic formula. Which is what we were working on last class. So identifying A would equal 2, B equals -8, C equals 6. Some of you guys really like this because it takes the guesswork out of what are the factors. So that would look like -b, so opposite of -8 would be +8, plus and minus the square root of b squared, -8 squared, minus 4ac, all over 2a. So if you type that in, that's 64 minus 48. Let's see, that comes out to square root of 16 divided by 4. So you get 8 plus 4 divided by 2, and, you guys can see that, 8 minus 4 divided by 2, that's, oh, sorry, it's divided by 4. I wrote that number wrong. I had over 4 and then I switched it in the middle of the problem. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So, if you look back, you do not have to do all this on all the questions. I'm showing your options on how to solve a quadratic. Option 1, most popular option, if it can be factored the X method, most people prefer to set it equal to 0. Factor the X method, solve by getting your 2 parentheses equal to 0. Some people notice things like, oh, these have something in common. I might take that out, so getting these 2 factors using the X method might be a little quicker, a little easier. Some people didn't like the X method at all, so quadratic formula was a good option. Quadratic formula is given to you on the test, so you have to just know, just set it equal to 0, pick out what's A, B, and C, and put it in the formula. Your choice on these, it literally even asks which option did you use. So these are 3 options to kind of give you an idea. How long before the dolphin hits the water? So after how many seconds did the dolphin reach a height of 6? So you got to remember the dolphin's going up and coming back down. So I circled in all these situations both answers, but technically t equals 1 second is the first time the dolphin would be going up. So if you think about the way this would look on a graph, is it's going to go up out of the water and it's going to come back down in the water. So when will it be at 6 feet? We're going to say if this was like 1 second, that would be at 6 feet. And then when it's coming back down at 3 seconds, it would also be at 6 feet. So when does the dolphin reach a height of 6 feet? Would be at 1 second, and then on the way back down, it's also at 3 seconds. So our true answer, how many seconds is the dolphin at a height of 6? It would be after 1 second. Because the second answer you get is going to be like when it's coming on the back down side. How long before the dolphin hits the water again? Well, you got to think it's going to come up and go back down. So this would be a height. This is height on this side. So we want to know when is it at a height of 0, because we want to know when is it going to go back in the water. So on this particular problem, we're going to let h equal 0 to do the same type of problem. If you have 0 equals negative 2t squared plus 8t. Well, we could set it equal to 0, but it's already set equal to 0. So what kind of factoring is this when we don't have 3 terms? Could we use the quadratic formula? Yes, we have an a term, we have a b term, but our c term would just be 0. So you could use the quadratic formula, or you could do a GCF. So I'm going to say option 1, I'll put GCF, or option 2, you could do quadratic formula. Because on this, they're not particular how you have to solve it, you get to choose. So in this case, I'm going to choose quadratic formula. I'm going to choose greatest common factor. I would say these can both be divided by a negative 2, so I'm going to take out a GCF of negative 2t, and when I do that, I'll be left with t minus 4 equals 0. To solve, we'll set negative 2t equal to 0 and t minus 4 equal to 0. This one, well, that's pretty easy. Divide by negative 2, t equals 0. And this one, you plus 4, t equals 4. So I'm going to circle after 4 seconds, the dolphin will come back down. So again, thinking about the dolphin goes up and the dolphin comes back down. At 0 and at 4 are the 2 places that the dolphin will be at the water level. Okay, so it goes out at height of 0, time of 0, and then back in at 4. How high does the dolphin jump? Well, that's a good question. That refers back to figuring out, okay, we know that at 1 second and 3 seconds, it was at a height of 6 feet. So the middle of that would come out to, if it's going to go up and it's going to come back down, the middle of this is at 2 seconds. Or you can find the middle of between 0 and 4, because quadratics are symmetrical, so the maximum height this dolphin's going to go should be halfway between these, we're seeing. So we're going to say at 2 seconds. And remember, T stands for time in this situation. So if you put how high did you jump, we're going to say h equals negative 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2. The 2's in this situation that we're plugging in represents 2 seconds. That would be halfway between when he goes out of the water and when he comes back in the water. So this is negative 2 times 4 plus 8 times 2. Negative 8 plus 16 equals 8. So the dolphin reaches a height of 8 feet. That's like its maximum. Alright, let's look at this one. Now we're talking about a rocket launching. They all go up and they come back down. How long will it take the rocket to reach the ground? So the ground would be at a height of 0. decide what's the best way to solve this. Again, you can use the quadratic formula, or even in this case, there's only two things, so we can do what's called a GCF. So we want to figure out what goes into 16 and 1,000. Well, let's try 4. 1,000 divided by 4 is 250, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. So those are both even numbers, so let's try 8. 1,000 divided by 8, well, that works, and 16 divided by 8 also works. So I'm going to take out a negative 8t. That'll give me positive 2t minus 125 equals 0. Because our height was 0 equals 0, so negative 8t equals 0. And 2t minus 125 equals 0. Solve. So the rocket starts on the ground at 0 seconds, which makes sense. The other answer, add 125 to the other side and divide by 2. And at 62.5, so 62 and a half. I'm going to go with seconds. Usually they're in seconds, so think about that's just over a minute. Then it asks, well, which method did you choose to find? The method I did was GCF. Could we do quadratic formula? Yes. This would be your A, this would be your B, and then C would equal 0 because we don't have a C term. Okay? Anytime something's hitting the ground, it's reaching a height of 0. The reason I didn't circle 0 as my first answer, that's when it takes off. This is takeoff. It's on the ground when it takes off, and this is when it lands back on the ground. Alright, we're at the Cardinal games. You guys have ever seen this or been to a Cardinals game? They shoot those shirts out of those big slingshots. This is the equation that's modeling that. It represents the path the shirt flies in the air. After how many seconds will the shirt reach a height of 16 feet? So height is 16, so we're going to do 16 equals negative 4t squared plus 20t. This one, remember, we want to set them equal to 0 to solve. So we're going to move our 4 to the left. We're going to subtract the 20 to the left. Now you can choose from here. Pause the video, do quadratic formula, do factoring. Pick a method that you want to solve, whichever one you're most comfortable with. I'm going to do X method. That's, like I said, in the past, a lot of people have preferred that. Some of my classes prefer quadratic formula. You choose your method, and we'll see what we get. So if you do that, this is your A, B, and C. If you want to do quadratic. If you want to X method, remember the top is your A times your C. So 4 times 16 is 64. The B term goes on bottom. We have negative 20. So we need factors of 64 that come out to negative 20. And let's see. This one happens to be 4 and 16 work really well. So we're going to use that. We're going to say negative 4 and negative 16 come out to, adding up to negative 20, and multiply to positive 64. So you cross off your middle. This is factoring X method. And you group them. These two have a 4t in common. This one has a negative 16 in common. So one parenthesis is 4t minus 16. The other parenthesis is t minus 1. So solve. Add 16. Divide by 4. T equals 4. This one's a little shorter. T minus 1 equals 0, plus 1, t equals 1. Okay, so after how many seconds will the shirt reach a height of 16? I would say 1 second. Because again, the shirt is going up and coming back down, and they're saying after 1 second, it's reaching a height of 16 feet. Okay? And then the graph's not real accurate, but the idea is it would come back down. And so here, at 4 seconds, it would also be at 16 feet. So after 1 second, it's reached a height of 16 feet. Explain the method you chose. I did what we call the X method, or factoring is what it's called. If you chose to do the quadratic formula, you just say, I chose to do the quadratic formula. After how many seconds will the shirt reach the ground? Okay, you got to remember, if it reaches the ground equals 0. So it would look like 0 equals negative 4t squared plus 20t. Again, this equation is given way up at the beginning. And maybe sometimes I have had students do this where they read the problem and they highlight the equation so they know, where do I need to look back to figure out where am I putting stuff. They're giving you the value for the h, the height, and you're just plugging it in there, and then you're solving typically by GCF, factoring, or quadratic formula. So this is my h, my height. I'm going to choose my GCF on this one. So negative 4t is what I'm going to take out. That leaves me with t minus 5. Then I'm going to solve. So separate them into two things. This one you divide by negative 4. And this one you add 5. Now I'm going to circle 5 seconds. After how many seconds will the shirt reach the ground? Well, this shows at 0. It starts on the ground, and then after it goes up and comes back down, it will take 5 seconds for it to go up and come back down to the ground. Okay? So, choices in solving today. Our choices are, so, plug in the given height. Then set equal to 0. 3. You're going to solve. And these are your choices. Some of them, if they're already set equal to 0, you can do GCF. You can X method. Or you can use the quadratic formula. We're practicing those ways we have learned to solve and applying it to the projectile motion formula, because that's a lot of times what we use with quadratic.